Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World, where every word matters. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this next interview. Moldova has recently uncovered a Russian-funded plot aimed at manipulating its upcoming elections and referendum on EU membership. Authorities report that over $15 million was funneled into the country to bribe voters, orchestrated by pro-Russian oligarch. Now, this campaign of voter bribery is seen as part of a broader effort by Moscow to derail Moldova's pro-Western trajectory. Joining us today on TVP World to discuss these revelations is Veronika Poniscjakova, Deputy Director of a Portsmouth Military Education Team from the University of Portsmouth. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
So first, we do know that Moldova claims it has uncovered a Russian voter rigging plot. How significant is this revelation for Moldova's political stability?
So first of all, I would say that we should have seen this coming. This is a wider trend and something that Russia planned for a long time. They have a very long established plan to destabilize Moldova. But this is significant because it seems that a great number of voters could have been bribed. And given the country's relatively small size, this number is definitely not insignificant.
Right, like I mentioned, this could probably be seen from a mile away. Maybe people who have been paying attention should notice that this is ongoing. But for most of us, can you break it down? What's the Russians' incentive? How does Russia directly benefit from destabilizing Moldova's upcoming elections and referendum?
First of all, Russia's main objective is to prevent the European Union from growing and, by extension, Moldova becoming more pro-Western and becoming part of the bloc. It is in Russia's interest to keep Moldova pro-Russian, to keep it as a buffer zone, between, well, themselves and hopefully from their perspective, obviously they do hope to conquer Ukraine. So keeping Moldova between Russia-occupied Ukraine and European Union, well, that is one of their main objectives.
Right, and how large of a scale are we talking about? We do know that 15 million, this number is not anywhere near insignificant, but when it comes to the scale of this infiltration and this funneling of funds, just how kind of deep, large, widespread kind of scale are we talking?
Well, some reports said that this could have affected more than 160,000 people. Again, how accurate some of these reports are, that is hard to tell. But if the number is accurate, again, we are talking about a rather significant number.
Right, and we also know that there is some involvement of Russian oligarch, one named Elan Shore. Can you tell us what his role is and how he is tied to the scheme?
So Moldovan oligarchs, again, Russia has been using them to pursue their own interests, so they have been a very useful tool for Russia. This particular one, Elan Shore, he's not even in Moldova at the moment. He has found refuge in Russia after he was found of some significant fraud in Moldova. Despite not being currently present in Moldova, he still wields influence within the country, and he's definitely suspected of trying to work towards Russia's interest in Moldova.
And like you mentioned before, a lot of these effects still are being tracked down, and it's really hard to tell just how widespread it is. With $15 million already funneled into Moldova, do you believe that there are any tools, or what kind of tools can authority use to combat this large-scale bribery?
This can be pretty hard. So Moldova, as well as other countries in the former communist or the former post-Soviet bloc, has suffered from widespread corruption for, well, ever since the breakdown of the Soviet Union. This is something they are still trying to combat. And the current government, they have been taking necessary steps to combat corruption. So the fact that this is happening, again, should have been expected. The country has long-standing issue with corruption. So the government can only take further steps to combat corruption. And also they do have to make sure that once the election does take place in more than 2 weeks' time, that it remains free and democratic. And they will need to make sure that there is no voter fraud.
Right, definitely something that will be a challenge to tackle. Now we do know that there are Russian influence when it comes to this election. Do you believe Moldova's more pro-Western leadership, especially President Maia Sandu, will be able to tackle it and overcome this interference, at least until, like you mentioned, the election that's coming up soon?
Hopefully, yes. And the polls do indicate that she's extremely likely to make it to the second round of the presidential election. Actually, what I think is more significant, it's not this election, but the second round. When it comes to the actual presidential election, when it comes to the European Union referendum, that's a completely different matter. But for her sake, it is really interesting to see what kind of steps Russia will want to take after this first round, and who is going to be the candidate that Maia Sandu is going to see in the second round. Because I think it is fair to assume that Russia will do whatever they can to support the second candidate and prevent Maia Sandu from winning her second term as the president.
Do you see more interference attempt at domestic internal politics when it comes to the candidates, or do you think that the EU referendum is something that the Russians are more wary of, hence putting more emphasis towards?
I think these two issues go hand in hand. So on one hand, we have Maia Sandu, who has been pursuing these pro-Western initiatives during her tenure as the president, and the EU referendum is part of that effort. So from Russia's perspective, it is, well, they're interested in both issues. They want to prevent they want to prevent Moldova from becoming a member of the European Union. At the same time, given Maia Sandu's steps in the past couple of years, and definitely the position that Moldova took in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Russia does not want to see Maia Sandu heading the country for another 4 years.
And Moldova has been accusing Russia of engaging in hybrid warfare. What does this entail, and why is it particularly dangerous?
So hybrid warfare, it's not, it takes multiple forms, and Russia has used this hybrid warfare against Moldova in multiple ways. For example, this would be one example what they are doing currently in Moldova. But it is also other things. The fact that they're trying to subvert the population, that they are also using, for example, the Russian Orthodox Church to sway people's views and influence people. But also it is, for example, the energy and how Russia is using energy to coerce people. In addition to that, we have also seen cyber attacks against Moldova in the past couple of years. So all of these efforts indicate that Russia has been undertaking hybrid warfare against Moldova, and of course other states in the region as well, and Ukraine, of course, being the main receiver of those efforts.
Right, and judging by your experience on the ground, because we would like to know, how's the sentiment inside Moldova? Have these efforts of, population, like I said, kind of subverting the population with various methods, like the church, for example, has it been effective on the Moldovan population, or not very much?
I think it's really hard to say. There has been perhaps some success, whilst the country as a whole rejected to some extent Russia's influence after Russia invaded Ukraine, and this influence within the country is not as strong as it used to be prior to the invasion. However, these long-standing sentiments, positive sentiments towards Russia, they still are widespread. Not as strong, but they're still there nevertheless. And that should be something we should be worried about, because it does show that Russia's information operations have been effective.
Right. And like you said, one of Russia's main goal perhaps is to prevent Moldova from turning westwards to, becoming a part of the EU. And what role can the European Union itself play in safeguarding Moldova's democratic process during these elections?
There's not much, perhaps, that the European Union can do apart from apart from emphasizing that Moldova is a sovereign state, and they can offer support to, they can support Moldova to make sure that there's no electoral interference on the ground on the day. But apart from that, there's not much they can do. If anything, actually, if they were to become more active, that would feed directly into Russia's propaganda, because Russia's propaganda has been really active, and they've been saying that Moldova is going to become a tool of the European Union, and that European Union is going to impose all kinds of, frankly, ridiculous policies in Moldova. So perhaps if they just keep quiet and let Moldova do their own thing, that would be the best response and would directly combat those propaganda tools by Russia.
Right, that's actually very interesting. Can you tell us how maybe Moldova's situation can reflect an even wider trend when it comes to Russian interference across Central Eastern European countries? Because we're seeing more and more of these type of Russian action, and it's not just limited to some very regional places anymore.
No, this is Russia's wider trend. As I said before, they just want to keep interfering. They want to destabilize the EU. And I think this is very important, what's going to happen in Moldova and what kind of steps they're going to take. And they're going to choose their future in the West. But at the same time, I'm still quite worried what Russia may respond if Moldova does become a member of the European Union, and that Russia is perhaps likely to use the Kosovo president once again, like they did in Ukraine. They've been trying to stir some tensions in Moldova as well. Again, there's a sizable Russian minority living within the state, and there already has been some propaganda saying that this population is being oppressed by the Moldovan government. So Russia is creating facts on the ground, more or less, for another invasion in future, like they did in Ukraine.
Right. So it is very alarming indeed. And do you think that this upcoming election in Moldova could be some sort of a bellwether that we observe to see whether or not some of these Russian influence methods, be it the bribery, be it kind of covert influence, is successful or not in interfering with countries within Eastern Europe?
Well, I think all we can do is just hope that Moldova can combat these initiatives and that they will be able to have a peaceful and free and fair and democratic election on October the 20th without any kind of interference from Russia.
All right. Thank you so much for your input and insight, and I really appreciate it. Thanks for being with us on TVP World.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers. And thank you for watching this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.